meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. Classical music has some genius composers that tragically died in their prime. Mozart, Frédéric Chopin, Felix Mendelssohn all passed away well before their 40th birthdays, and it makes one wonder what music would be gracing the world today had they lived and wrote for decades longer. And the early Scottish auto industry was briefly blessed with a genius that tragically left us far too soon. Alexander Govan. He was born in 1869 in Blantyre, a small town near Glasgow, Scotland. His father, David, worked at a local mill, and the family was of very modest means. Hard times hit the town in the late 1880s, and Alex left Blantyre for Glasgow in early 1891. He found work there as an apprentice machine operator, working at a textile mill on the power looms. But he had much greater ambitions than this. Govan spent his evenings taking classes in engineering at the Glasgow Technical College, even winning awards for his design brilliance. Wanting to flex his engineering skills, he left the job at the textile mill and partnered with his brother-in-law, John Wharton, to start a new business, design, build, and sell bicycles. Calling them Warvan, combining their last names, they began to offer them for sale in 1892. Unfortunately, the brothers did not have much money between them, nor were they studied businessmen, and so the concern was out of business by 1896. Alex left Glasgow for a couple of years to study bicycle manufacture in London, where he also plugged into the local engineering fellowship groups. Not long after, Great Britain was unleashed from the Red Flag Act, and many people were now talking about these newfangled automobiles in the circles he associated in. Discussions of how they worked, were designed, and their possible shortcomings was filling Govan's ears. He returned to Glasgow in 1898 a complete petrolhead. He wanted to design and build cars. He believed he was more than capable of doing so, provided he had the capital backing him up. Thankfully, he was also extremely enthusiastic, and his passion caught the attention of a certain William Smith. Smith was a very successful businessman in Glasgow, owning several businesses trading in different commodities. He decided to back Govan's dream, and thus the Hosier Engineering Company formed in 1899 to produce a new car, the Argo. His car was based on the Renault models of the time, de Dion engines of 2 3/4 horsepower, shaft-driven, and a 2-speed transmission plus reverse of his own design. The shift pattern of this car was rather different, as it was gated in a T form. The first gear was top left, second top right, and reverse straight down. And they sold very well. Within a year, the factory was moved to a much larger facility to be able to keep up with the demand. Alexander needed to make lots of cars as quickly and inexpensively and as soon as possible. He set his mind to these tasks, improving the mass production process at the new factory. Though not a moving assembly line, the layout of the factory was a true model of efficiency. To keep costs down even further, he chose to continue outsourcing the engines to de Dion, offering more and larger engines each year and buying them at bulk discounts. By 1903, Argyll was the largest automaker in the British Isles and amongst the largest in the world, but Alex thought he could do better. He had heard of Henry Ford and in early 1904 made a rather covert trip to the USA, primarily to spy on Ford and how he was mass producing. After gathering the intelligence as well as making some other automotive contacts in the US, Govan returned to Glasgow and immediately began to build a new and even larger factory, the Argyll Motor Works. The factory was completed in mid-1906. Now offering engines from Astor as well as De Dion, the new factory was a massive 12 acres of car assembly. The new cars coming from the factory no longer looked French, but distinctly Scottish. Consider this 1906 Landaulet. 4-cylinder Astor engine of 15 horsepower, 3-speed transmission, shaft drive, and well-built. It was also about 20% less money to buy than the contemporary European makes, and Govan was already being spoken of as Scotland's Henry Ford. It was while having dinner at a local Glasgow restaurant in May of 1907 that he suddenly collapsed. He lost consciousness and died hours later from a cerebral aneurysm at the age of 36. Bereft of their genius, the company began a rapid decline. The huge new factory never achieved full production capacity and was sold off in 1914 to become a munitions factory, making artillery shells for the British Army. Could Alexander Govan have truly become the European Henry Ford, or even perhaps surpassed him? You can only imagine what the world would have become. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week.